Hey, good morning, everyone. Nandish Madhupadi in here, and welcome to the Financial Institutions webinar for 2021. The topic of our interest for today is low code and AI. So we have, before I get into that, let's take a quick look at introducing myself. My name is Nandish Madhupadi. For many of you who know me, I'm the Enterprise Solution Manager here based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I have about 20 years of experience in the software industry. I started my career in the manufacturing industry, but then subsequently moved on to serving many industry verticals such as defense. And then for the last 10, 12 years or so, I've been focused or hyper-focused on the CRM technologies, mainly focused on servicing with the retail customers, with manufacturing industries, with telecom, financial services, and so on and so forth. So I'm very excited to be here talking about the emerging new technologies and trends for 2021. And we have quite a bit of topics for talking about today. So for a number of things is that COVID-19 in year 2020 was a revolution, right? And also a revelation at the same time. So we want to understand, given that global pandemic that impacted many, many things, what has actually transpired? What has been the net positive impact, net negative impacts on the financial industry? And then we're going to bucket ourselves into two technologies. Number one would be artificial intelligence and see how we can take advantage of AI and then use that in various means. Of course, coming from Creatio perspective, we're going to be hyper focused on the CRM perspective, CRM side of AI. And then also from the low code perspective, what can we do to understand customer analysis, customer sentiment analysis, customer profiling? What can we do potentially with all of that? Now we're going to combine both of them, and then there is going to be a hands-on demo, a pre-configured demo that we're going to focus on the AI side of Creatio and also from a low-code side of the Creatio. Then we'll take some Q&A. So we have quite a bit of topics to cover. Now, as is the tradition with any of our webinars, we want to give, for people who are not familiar with Creatio, we want to give you a very quick introduction. So we are a company that is multiple decades now. We are multinationals. We have offices around the globe. A significant number of employees are focused or hyper-focused on product development. So what enables for us to do that alongside with a strong partner network and people using our products in multiple countries, over 110 countries, is that we now take the product from end to end. So in many ways, I like Creatio to be like Apple, right? So that means you're doing the hardware, software, just like Apple does. We do the marketing, sales, service, and low code. Now, what it enables us to do is that it gives us a complete freedom of providing the top-notch quality of product to our customers. And that is getting noticed by the likes of Gartner and Forrester, right? Gartner has recognized us in the 5 of their quadrants, and Forrester has recognized in 7 of the Forrester waves. Now, what is very important to us is in which category do we get noticed for, right? So you can see that it is spread across the lines of businesses. We are a market leader in Salesforce automation, and we are in that quadrant alongside with the likes of Salesforce, Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, top-notch companies, but there are tens of thousands of employees working there, and many of their products were already market leaders before they got acquired by them. Unlike us, which we organically have built these solutions inside of Creatio Labs and then made that into a market leader. And that's what separates Creatio from the rest of these big companies, right? And that is a matter of pride for us, a matter of pride for everybody here in Creatio. Now, outside of that, we get the notice for lead management on the marketing side, Salesforce automation, low-code automation, customer engagement on the customer side as well. So across the wide variety of spectrum, we are getting noticed by Gartner. And also same thing from the Forrester side as well. You can see that it is basically everywhere, wide deployments, DCM, Salesforce automation, marketing automation, customer service automation, a really wonderful thing for us as well. Now, enough of about what Creatio is, but what it actually mean. What does it all mean to us as COVID-19 has had a net positive and sometimes negative impacts as well, right? So there are 3 trends that come about, especially from the financial industry, that has actually happened. And I, for one, can actually attest to that because I actually have personal examples of that as well. Number one is digital adoption, right? Last week when I was doing another webinar for the manufacturing side, I was talking about actually a cartoon that I saw on LinkedIn. It said, what is the number one reason for the CIOs to undergo digital transformation, right? And the answer overwhelmingly was COVID-19. And that is because when COVID-19 hit, many of the companies were caught flat-footed, especially the traditional banking companies. They did not know how to react. And there was a spike in fintech technologies that we saw. And that, I believe, opened up the eyes of many of the CIOs. And when I am talking to the CIOs and in the banking these days, we were talking to a very big bank in Guatemala, and they're going through digital transformation. We're talking to the same things, big banks in Brazil, big banks in the United States. What worked in 2019 is no longer working in 2021. So therefore, they need to be adapting to those digital transformations. And fintech has pretty much taken over in terms of lending, peer-to-peer lending, in terms of money transfer, and so on and so forth. Now, the second digital trend that we are seeing is digital experience, right? So digital tools like chatbots are increasingly becoming more and more prevalent. I, for one, always bank with Bank of America, and I've been doing that for about 15 years. And to see that monolith financial institution adapt to the digital experience has been somewhat of a revelation for me. So back in 2005, when I used to go to the Bank of America, there used to be so many, there were multiple branches, obviously, and within multiple branches, there was relationship managers, tellers, there were so many people working that branch. But 2 years ago, they actually closed out the Bank of America branch where I'm located in Groton, Massachusetts. And now all that is enabled is there is a giant big screen where I can do everything that I was able to do in the past. Like I can deposit cash, I can withdraw cash, I can withdraw cash in different currencies from the ATM. Previously, it used to be restricted to $20 bills, but now it is $10, $5. It is amazing what has actually transpired. And I believe with COVID-19, this has only accelerated, and this is also validated by the likes of CNBC and Accenture as well. And the third trend is consumer centric, right? So for example, when COVID-19 was going on in 2020, if I had to get money from someone else, I did not want to touch that cash because people were worried that who knew how COVID was being transmitted from one individual to the other individual. What if somebody coughed on that currency and then you had to take it and you're touching that? So people were avoiding even touching those currencies as well, right? So what that means is that the money transfer happened digitally. I was encouraging people to use like Zelle or Venmo or any other peer-to-peer payment options that was out there. And Bank of America is big on Zelle these days. And when I'm giving money to my cleaning lady, when I'm giving money to my son's piano class, she refuses to take cash. She refuses to take check these days. She is all about Venmo, and she is a 60-year-old woman, right? So we are not talking about across these changes that is transcending age and the continent and gender and so on and so forth as well. So these are amazing things that is going on, and we need to adapt to that as well. Now, given those three trends that is going on, what are the priorities that the CIOs of the companies are focused on? Now, number one, obviously, is that cloud is a given. Like if people are not on cloud, there is something wrong with them because digital transformation is cost capital centric, right? There is a lot of capital that needs to be invested. If you're not in the cloud, you then can convert that capital cost into an operating cost. And therefore, that digital transformation can happen much, much faster. Now, when you take applications to the cloud, that also fundamentally transforms the IT operating model. The budgets needs to be changed, the skill levels of the people from a legacy IT team, that has to be changed. The technology is adapting as well. Now you got to keep up with the technology. There's a re-engineering of architecture. And more importantly, when it goes to the cloud and you're dealing with people's money, security is extremely important. People get angry when they lose a dollar because because of some hacking. People can lose lots of money. People are very afraid of losing money, and therefore, when you are transforming digitally your banking operations, security is paramount, right? And in order to do that, they need to attract the right people with the right talent skills to make sure that all of those technologies are going in line with the latest technology, but also in a more secured way. So those are all the priorities that we are seeing from on where the CIOs of big banks are focused on. Now, as I mentioned previously, there are two buckets that we're going to focus on. One is AI and the other is low code. So let's first focus on the AI itself. And for people who have been familiar with Creatio platform, you know that this is something of importance to us. We've been super focused on AI for the longest period of time, right? And if you recall earlier, we used to be mostly focused on numeric predictions, but now we have accelerated our offerings in product recommendation as well. Now, where did we get that information? Why are we doing that? Because we are also talking to the likes of Gartners. We are also talking to the likes of Forrester, PwC, and all of these consulting companies to understand what is going on and make sure that we are focused on that as well. And now, from an AI perspective, this can scan multiple departments, obviously, right? From a CRM perspective, what this means is that let's continue to understand how customers or our employees are leveraging business processes to continue to make operational efficiencies. Like if we can continue to monitor that, then we'll be able to reduce the number of manual clicks, reduce the number of mistakes. Mistakes in financial institutions can have compliance cost, and those compliance costs can be significant. It could be in millions of dollars, right? So that is something that we need to be focused on. The second, obviously, it's personalization, right? So for example, householding strategy in financial institutions is a big thing. What if we understand that out of 4 different people in the CRM database, all of them actually are part of the household? It's a father, mother, and 2 kids in colleges. Wouldn't that be awesome that if the father has the credit card but the mother does not, or the kids don't, then wouldn't it be great to make a personal offer to say that, listen, because you're a dad and already a credit card holder from this financial institutions, how about student credit cards for 2 of your kids? That would be wonderful, right? So those kinds of personalizations requires additional intelligence on part of CRM to give that perspective to the CRM owners to say that, hey, this is how you should position it, and these are the products that you need to position to that particular householding. And then finally, obviously, as data is getting more and more available in the system, the AI algorithms continue to get better and better, and therefore the accuracy goes up as well. So those are all things that we are focused on. Now, looking at those things, what is the net benefit for the banking customers, right? So, for example, from a Bank of America, going back to Bank of America as well, because I know that bank extremely well. They launched a chatbot called Erica. Erica is available both on mobile device and also on the desktop. So anytime I log into the Bank of America mobile application, I can launch Erica, which is this chatbot that helps me, tells me that what is my budget look like? How much did I spend this month? Is that in line with what I had done previously in the last couple of months? What was my biggest line item? What is my FICO score? All of those things that previously I had to go and set it up is something that Erica is bringing up to me. It's making these recommendations so that I can say that, well, this is great. So maybe this is a subscription that I've been spending money over the last 2 months, that I've last 2 years that I've not been using. So maybe it is time for me to call up and cancel that subscription, right? So it gives me a perspective of not only what my state of the bank accounts are, but also from the segmentations of where, as a customer or a consumer, where am I spending those money, right? So bank is now helping me becoming a little bit more financially aware using AI technologies, right? Cash flow events. Now imagine this being done at scale. Imagine being this done on an enterprise level. These are wonderful things that is going on. Now, moving on to the initiative side, PwC is something is actually a prospect that we've been talking to quite a bit. And PwC by itself, even though they are also a consulting company and they are collecting all of these surveys by themselves, they are also going after these initiatives internally as well. So what they have identified is that where are the key areas in which banks are focused on AI, right? There are two ways for any company to grow. One is grow the revenue. Second is cutting cost. Those are the only two ways in which the profitability or the revenue growth continues to go better, right? So that's where the CEO is focused on, right? So the easiest one is obviously reducing cost, because going after and getting net new businesses can be quite expensive. So improving efficiency is naturally the first thing that comes to the mind of any CEO or CFO or CIO when it comes about where the AI can be used. So operational efficiency, getting rid of manual tasks. We are hearing about RPAs, right? UiPath and automation anywhere, and so on and so forth. Improving operational efficiencies by the magic of low-code business processes from the likes of Creatio, or using RPA technologies to automate things as much as possible, is obviously the number one thing that these executives are focused on. Now, as a net result of improving those efficiencies, what is going to happen is when you don't spend time on redundant activities, or multiple people are doing the same things over and over again, that is going to result in significant cost savings. When cost goes down, profitability goes up, and therefore that is a net positive thing for the CEO. Now, once you take care of the cost, then it is all about growing the businesses, right? And that's where the personalization comes in. I talked about chatbots that Erica has from Bank of America and many other companies as well. Capital One also has the similar chatbot these days. It is all about when people log into the application, you have their attention. Why not position next best thing? And that's what Erica does. That's what the chatbot from Capital One does. Every time I log in, it says, hey, you've been spending so much. Have you thought about buying this credit card? Because it has a 3% cash back. It is a 5% cash back, 60,000 points when you join in. Now, what they're doing is they're building a profile of myself using my spending habits, my income that I generate, and based upon that, building a profile, a holistic profile of me, and based upon that, they're creating a personal offer just for me, right? Which might be very different than what my wife gets and what my neighbor gets. And that is incredible. And that can be only possible when you have a large number of data, and that requires AI to do so. It's very difficult for humans to do those things. Now, when you take care of operational efficiencies and make sure that every operations, every business processes within the banking is adhering to those standards that the bank is going through, now what is happening is you are in line with compliance. Compliance with laws is I would say, as a result of making sure that the business processes are exactly the way it is. Once the banks adhere to the compliances and make sure that all of the policies are in line, that also help in making sure that unnecessary lawsuits, unnecessary non-compliance lawsuits that are very expensive to the banks are avoided. And that also helps in cost savings as well, right? And then finally, from a marketing perspective, when you understand your customer profile, you will then be able to extend that data set to incoming net prospects as well. So this is from a benefit of going from the last two, the bottom two, which is development and then expansion, is all about using the data set to make predictions about who those customers are, who else is out there that we can go and get those new millennials in to do business with us as those millennials are coming into the workforce. So those are all the AI initiatives, right? And adoption perspective, obviously, every CFO, every CIO, every CEO is risk averse. Obviously, from adoption perspective, the first thing they go after is risk mitigation, right? What can I do to grow my business, but also manage risk as much as possible? Now, from a CRM perspective, what we see is a lot of these AI obviously being used in the customer service side, because that is how most of the companies are being measured. Like for example, when I talk about a particular company, the reason I like Apple in particular is because of the amazing customer service that they have. Like the service that I get from their website is very similar to what I get from the retail store. Everything is working in a very smooth, frictionless manner. And all of that is enabled because of they have a strong data set, and they're using AI in the background. They have a good business processes, taking care of things, and so on and so forth. So the AI adoption is going across the board, whether you're talking to the marketing person, understanding it from their prospect perspective, they're looking at it from a sales management perspective, to continue to make their sales processes better in terms of new product recommendations, so they can continue to cross-sell, upsell to their existing customers, so on and so forth. Now that is from the AI side. Now, what is this allowing for the banks to? What is this allowing the banks to do? Right. So when banks are talking to, they are literally competing with the likes of Venmos. They're competing in the likes of Zelle. They're competing in terms of other peer-to-peer money transfer services. Right. Those are traditionally a gold mine, or a list of gold mine for the banks, because traditionally they used to rely on those transfer fees in order to make money. Those fees that you pay, $3, $4, whatever that may be, are a significant revenue source for these banks, and they made those money for about 150 years. And now all of a sudden, this fintech company comes out in California, built by a 24-year-old kid, and their business is suddenly under threat. So allowing this AI is going to position these big banks to provide the services to their existing customers, because they cannot be ignored, and then continue to compete with the likes of these fintech companies as well. So those are all phenomenal ways in which traditional banks can continue to balance their variety of customer base that they currently have, and make sure that they're not compromising on the customer experience. Now, that was on the AI side, and we will focus a little bit more when we go into the demo side as well. Now, what is enabling those business processes in the background is low code, right? In order to enable digital transformation, and in order to enable digital transformation in a very smooth, fast manner, you need to have a low code technologies, right? So, and this is actually, I have a personal experience with PwC on this, because I was talking to PwC last year in Canada, and they are big on low code internally as well. They are actually looking at their own technology stack, and then they're saying that, hey, how can we make ourselves better? And that is understandable, because if they are a consulting company that has to go and provide consulting services or advices to key CEOs or CIOs of other companies, then they need to have a personal experience about using low code themselves, right? So what they're saying is, anytime they have to build a new technology or a new feature in their existing technology stack, it is taking them significant amount of time to do that, right? Because now you're looking at a technology that was built in 2000, 2005, 2006. That was way before cloud existed. Then you have to find out developers who have knowledge of those platforms, and not many developers have that knowledge anymore, right? Because these days everybody's focused on AWS, Azure, and other cloud technologies. Not many people know about Fiserv banking, Jack Henry banking software from 1995 or 1998. So the amount of people that do know those features is very limited, which makes them very expensive to keep them as well. So it's cost them a lot of money. So all of these ultimately are resulting in the fact that financial organizations are facing challenges to keep up with the customer expectations. So the only way to do this is to make sure that they get rid of those legacy applications and embrace low-code technology, right? So, and that is validated by market research as well. So when you speak to the likes of Gartner or Forrester, a significant number of development these days are going in the low-code direction. And I can, again, attest to that myself, because I talk to so many customers in various continents, South America, North America, different countries like Mexico or Canada or US or Guatemala or Brazil. Everybody is talking about low-code applications these days. Whether it is being talked about from a customer onboarding, KYC, know your customer, anti-money laundering, from sales processes, whatever that may be, they are all focused on low-code technology, and that is validated again by both Gartner and Forrester. So what does actually, when you take a look at the supply and demand, what we are now noticing is that the supply of low-code developers are rapidly increasing, obviously. And these days, as and when we are hiring newer and newer developers, we are realizing they're asking the questions about, hey, how well do you know the business? And how well do you know just enough technology to make those changes? And the key reason for this is very simple. The concept of everyone a developer, right? Now, this concept is a similar concept of everyone a photographer that iPhone came up with, right? So when iPhone came and made smartphones mainstream and cameras were added as part of the smartphone, all of a sudden, people who had no experience with photography were able to capture really amazing photographs and using the filtering mechanisms of Instagram or within iPhone itself, we're able to take this really high quality photographs and post it on their Facebook or Twitter or whatever that social media platforms they have. Similar thing is also happening on the development side. So what if, who knows those business extremely well? And those are business analysts. Those are business people. In the past, what would happen is that whenever business people wanted a certain feature or a functionality or extending their current application, whether that be PeopleSoft or EBS or some other legacy application we're talking about, they had to go and explain what they wanted to do to an IT person. The IT team has no clue what the business does. Business has no clue how IT is actually building that application. The net result was that there will be oftentimes communications lag, right? And then IT has to go and put it in their back burner. They're working on many other projects. So what that means is they will get to this maybe a month later, and then they will identify a developer. The developer obviously has no clue what the business does. Then they go and develop something, and then they have to give it back to the business person to say, how does this look? And oftentimes there's back and forth multiple times. Then it has validated by QA before it gets pushed out to the system. It was taking months on end. And that is no longer an option, especially in days like this. So what has transpired is the citizen developer, which means that if you give enough tools to the business owners, they will be, because they know what that end result should look like, they will be able to rapidly build those solutions instantly. When I mean instantly, I'm talking about days as opposed to months on end, and therefore it will be much faster development and much faster deployment. And that is validated by Gartner as well. So we need to make sure that citizen developer is not somebody who is going to completely displace professional developer or anything like that. There are spaces in which professional development is still required. There is a space where citizen developer is required. With citizen developer, oftentimes they are not a full-time developer. They only do this on a part-time basis. They are still more focused on growing their businesses. They're mostly focused on business processes. And then the professional developer, on the other hand, is super focused on other things like cloud development, deployment, so on and so forth. So we have to make sure that they definitely coexist. Now, from a benefit side, obviously, the benefits of low code is that the time to deployment, time to development and deployment is significantly reduced, oftentimes by 40 to 60%. And when you reduce the number of time it takes to develop, obviously the cost also goes down, right? And increasingly more and more people, like I mentioned previously, are going in that direction, and oftentimes they're talking about significant cost savings by going in the low code direction. And this trend is not going to stop by any means necessary. This is only going to go significantly larger. And for that significant cost savings, you can look at what Forrester has outlined, about $8.1 million on the top left-hand corner. So now that we know what are the benefits of the low code platform, what we are looking at is automating IDS in a matter of minutes. Now, how is Creatio uniquely positioned to help those financial institutions achieve those digital transformations, both from an AI perspective and also from a low code perspective? And this goes back to our superpowers that we've been highlighting for quite some time now, and that is bringing in the three different technologies of business process engine, supplemented with low code platform using drag and drop functionality, and all subsisting on the unified CRM, where there is the sales, marketing, service, all combined into a single platform. So a single solution, but that can provide multiple benefits, right? And then when you go into the bank itself, from a CRM, front office, middle office, or the back office, you'll see that irrespective of where you're coming from a low code perspective, when you start looking at from individual things. So for example, from a middle office, when a loan comes in and there is an underwriting process, there's a compliance that needs to occur. These are all distinct business processes that needs to happen within the financial institutions. In order to do so, you need to develop a business process applications to facilitate step-by-step process on how those things are done. For example, loan disbursement, know your customer, anti-money laundering, GDPR, verification steps, all of those, each of those individual business processes can be enabled using Creatio extremely well. Now, with all of that, let me jump onto the demo and explain how Creatio can enable both of those AI and machine learning. All right, so now you should be able to see my screen. Right now, we are now looking into Creatio platform. So there are a couple of things in which, in various ways in which the AI can transpire. First of all, let's take a look at a contact profile. It's a contact of Donald Tran. Donald Tran obviously has certain metrics that the bank by itself is tracking. So from an average sentiment score, how he is responding to the bank whenever he makes a customer service call, what is the churn rate in which he's currently looking at. So churn of 99 is pretty bad, which means that very likely he's doing business with somebody else. It's now time for us to go ahead and bring him back and so on and so forth, right? So those are all things that you can do. Now, from an AI perspective, we provide machine learning models. And for people who are not familiar with machine learning models, there are 4 kinds of predictions that we can do inside of Creatio as of the latest version. Number 1 is the lookup prediction, which simply means that who is the best person, for example, to work on a given lead. It could be from a list of selection. What is the best product? That could also be a lookup. Anything that can be selected from a list of selection would be considered as a lookup prediction. So the use case would be best person to follow up on a lead, best agent to work on a customer service prediction. Those are all lookup prediction. The second one is numeric prediction. Numeric prediction is basically used in situations where you're predicting a given number. So for example, what is the likelihood of a customer, banking customer, churning out, meaning that they are no longer going to do business with us. Maybe they will go ahead and do business with somebody else. Maybe we are losing to another fintech company, right? So we can look at the last transactions and say that, well, they have not done any transactions with us in the last 6 months. They're in the danger of going inactive. So therefore, let's go ahead and start doing some marketing activities. So you can supplement with that. Third is obviously predictive scoring, which is basically you're saying what is the likelihood of this person doing something. So for example, it could be a lead. When a lead coming in, what's the likelihood of that lead actually converting into a full-blown customer? That would be a predictive scoring, right? And finally, there is recommendation engine. Recommendation is where we are positioning various products. And so when the customer expresses interest in, say, savings account, we can then recommend them along with the savings account. We can position them a debit card, maybe online banking, money transfers, and other various services associated with those savings account, which is the primary importance for them, right? So first things, let's take a look at the contact sentiment analysis right around here. So contact sentiment analysis is a predictive scoring that is already pre-built. So basically what we are doing is we are monitoring the tweet of the customer. So anytime a tweet is being filled in, as long as the tweet is positive, we're going to continue to make some sentiment analysis. If the tweet is negative, then obviously it has a negative sentiment analysis. If it is non-negative, then it makes a positive sentiment analysis. Now let's take a look at how this actually looks in real world, right? So for example, I'll go back to Donald Tran right now. And then let's go to the history tab, and then let's assume that he's making a new tweet, right? So for example, the last tweet he made was on October 26th. Let's go ahead and say that he made a new tweet that we saw, right? Maybe it was a very positive tweet, perhaps. I can say, thanks so much. for the awesome support. And of course, this is happening in the Twitter. It is not happening in the, and this information is being pulled from the Twitter account. And let's say the sentiment analysis is 56 or so, then click save, right? So what is happening right now is as soon as the tweet is recorded, you will then see that in the background, we are running the workflow, and then using business processes, we are recalculating the average sentiment score. I probably should have highlighted this, but it was actually 42 before that sentiment came in, and it jumped into 44, indicating that, hey, this was actually a positive tweet that Donald Trump had put it in our Twitter page, and we were able to capture that, dock it against Donald Trump, and then automatically make a prediction that, hey, he's actually trending in the right direction. What was positive previously a red zone, we are currently in the yellow zone, but we have a lot of work to do before we get into the safe zone of his sentiment analysis. That's number one. Number two is you can see that from a churning perspective, this Donald 10 is now a very high churn rate, right? So this means that this is a very likelihood that Donald 10 is going to potentially go with somebody else from a banking perspective. So if you go into the transaction side, you'll notice that the last transaction is March 21st. So it's been a long time, 2020 I'm talking about. It's been a very long time. Now let's take a look at how did we capture that 99 churn rate. So let's go back to the machine learning model and then take a look at the other one. So for this time, we're going to look at the churn rate prediction, right? So churn rate prediction is now making a scoring, a predictive scoring for a given object. In this case, it is an individual contact. And now what we are doing is we are now looking at everybody who is a customer and who are currently active, meaning that we are now looking at active customers. We are looking at a bunch of factors that depend on which that prediction is actually being made, right? So this could be number of transactions in the current quarter, previous quarter, number of point of sale transactions, ATM transactions. Basically, we are super focused on how much activity, financial activity, does this individual have with our current bank. Currently, we have looked at transaction date of March 1st. So right now we are saying that it doesn't have to be, but I'm just showing you a specific scenario in here. Let's say that rather than March 1st, I am going to say that I'm going to only look at it from a January 1st perspective. What this means is that I know there has been transactions in the month of March, which means that since March 1st, there will be multiple transactions, unlike the previous time where all the transaction was preceding April 1st, right? So if I save this and then ask it to retrain this AI, so now what is happening is it is actually kicking off the new training process. It said that, oh, there's a new data that I need to look for. And now I've done the retraining. And you can see that when you did the training model, these two factors are making the most predictions or have the highest weight, right? We are looking at it from a most deposit transaction followed by the ATM transactions. So let's go ahead and see how that actually looks in real life. Let's go ahead and take a look at Donald 10. And now, since we have changed that scenario, it is currently still showing that as 99 because it's still using historical data, and that transactions is based upon April 1st, because after April 1st there was no transaction. That's why it was 99. But now I changed it to January 1st of 2020. But subsequent, there is a lot of transactions in here. So we should expect the churn rate to go down from 99 to something else. So let me go ahead and rerun this again. And of course, I'm running this manually in here, but ideally this should be run automatically. I'm just showing you what the process looked like. Okay, so now the process is completely refreshed, and I'm going to refresh the screen, and now you should see a different score than 99. Now you saw that this, what was previously 99 for the contact churn rate, has now gone all the way down to 0, because what has actually happened is now there is a data to say that, hey, starting January 1st, there was a lot of transaction that Donald Trump did. Therefore, he is not going to churn because he's continuing to do business with you. And of course, I can use this data for my marketing purposes and say that I want to use all of my customers who have a churn rate of 0 to 33 and use that in a marketing campaign. On the flip side, if I get the churn rate between 66 and 100, then I can use that for another marketing campaign to go and do some customer retention activities, right? I can disperse different, using low code business processes, I can disperse many activities to the customers to say that, hey, these are all the various things that you should do in order to um, retain the customers as much as possible. That's number one. The second part in which you can do is obviously the numeric prediction or predictive scoring. So for that, we can generate a new lead. So let's go ahead and create a new lead right now. And you can see that when the new lead, let's say from an investment loan perspective, and I'll put Alex Donald Tan, click save. So basically what I've done is I've created a new lead. As soon as I create a new lead, you can then see that a predictive score has automatically been kicked off to say that the likelihood of this individual doing is about becoming a full-blown customer is about 33% because it's a 1 star out of 3. So this is another lead scoring, which is, by the way, out of the box that is enabled, so that you can use it from a lead perspective, from a sales perspective, to understand when a new lead comes in, what is the likelihood of the customer actually turning into a customer, right? So I can look at this and say that, well, there needs to be a little bit more work that I need to establish because the customer is still a suspect. So therefore, I need to do a better job about qualification to see even if I want to spend more time on converting this customer or what has been the previous concern and so on and so forth. So you're doing some little bit of behavior analysis. And the final way that you can also do is also from a contact center side. If you recall from the slide earlier, I had mentioned that one of the key areas in which machine learning and AI has been used is in the customer service side, right? So those are extremely important as well. So let's go into the case management from the customer side and see in which areas that Creatio is enabling AI. So let me go ahead and create a new case and select Donald Tan and select a particular service, maybe payment card not working. And let me click, okay, let me put debit is not working. So while this case is being registered, you will see a couple of things that are happening right now. So for example, number one, there is already a machine learning algorithm that is kicking it off to say that when this case comes in, based upon the service, which is payment cards not working, and the profile of the customer, we are predicting who is the best agent to be working on it. Now, why is this helpful? Well, this is helpful in situations where you have contact service agents who are specialists in various product lines, right? So this is a good way for you to break it up into individual assignees. You can also break it up into individual groups as well. So any lookups that is available in here, you can do that. The other way you can also use this is what is the customer mood, right? Based upon historical data, we can say that what is the customer mood? Are they pissed off? Are they somewhat happier? So on and so forth. Right now, panicked is getting 20% rating, which means that customer obviously, because this is concerning their debit card, are really worried about it. So that's another way in which you can make those things. And then finally, there is another way you can also make predictions is to say, what is the recommended channel of communications? This is very helpful in situations when you're talking to a millennial who likes to interact on the social media side, or you're talking to a baby boomer, 60 years and older, who likes to still pick up the phone and talk, right? So these are all the various ways in which we can enable using Creatio multiple ways in which you can disperse the cases, understand the customer sentiment, or recommend a way in which the best way to talk to the customer. So those are all various ways in which you can do that. Now I want to do one last thing, and that is on the low code side. So this is where we are using low code to understand what is the customer sentiment, right? Building a customer profile. So what this means is that when we're looking at from a CD perspective, right? So for example, maybe you have a list of your customers, and those customers are all managing their CDs, and their CDs is expiring in the month of September. Now you want to understand how is your customer going to behave when you reach out to them. So here is a marketing campaign that will enable you to do a low code A/B testing. So previously I showed you everything about machine learning and AI. Now I'm showing you how you can use low-code technology in order to understand a customer profile. A little different use case that you're traditionally used to, right? So what we're doing here is that we are picking up all of our customers whose CDs are expiring in the month of September, and then using the random split, which you can download from our marketplace, we're going to let Creatio automatically split people up by a certain percentage. So we're now saying that we're going to take, say, 100 people whose CDs are expiring month of September. Only 50 of them will be randomly picked up by Creatio to participate in this marketing campaign. The other 50 will automatically be taken out of the campaign automatically without you having to do anything. Then, if you notice, we are actually calling a business process, right? So this is the ad data. So now for the other 50%, which means that 50% of the original audiences, we're going to set up some activities, right? And those activities using business processes, low code, we are tying it to a specific campaign. We are saying that, hey, as a customer service agent, you need to reach out to them. And what we are doing here is we are reminding them that, hey, your CD is expiring in September. Would you want to renew that CD, right? And then if we did not get hold of them, then we can do an omni-channel way of outreach to say that after 3 days, we're going to send them a reminder email, typical marketing campaign, again done through low-code technology. And then 3 days later, we're going to do another SMS notification to say that, hey, your CD is expiring. Would you want to renew, or do you want to do an automatic renew? Now, why are we doing this? Now, this is enabling us to randomize A/B testing, right? This is a great way to use marketing campaign to do A/B testing in a multiple ways. If you recall, from a Creatio perspective, there is an A/B testing email that is allowed. But what we are doing right now is A/B testing from a marketing campaign side, right? So once we have the data to say that of the 50% of the people how many of them actually went and renewed those CDs, and for 50% of the people who exited that campaign, how many of them got and did not renew that CD. Now, using that, we'll be able to build analytics to say that, hey, initially we had 58 people. Out of that 58 people, because of randomizing, we split them evenly into 29 and 29 each. And out of that 29, how many of them actually renewed that CD? Out of the 29 who were taken out of that campaign, who actually renewed that CD? So clearly, from here, we realize that, at least from this analytics, we realize that from our customer profile, it is better that we reach out to the customer, remind them to renew that CD rather than let them self-decide, because there is a likelihood of them churning and not doing repeat business with us. And that is a revelation, right? So what we are doing is combining the power of AI, machine learning, low-code business processes alongside with Creatio's strong marketing platforms to combine to understand what does our customer profile look like. And then after this, you can continue to do even more, right? Once you have done that, then in the next month, you're going to take it to the next level, right? Obviously, what we're doing here is not only just the CDs expiring, but now we are going into one next level to say that only the CDs expiring, but also whose balances are greater than 25K. Only those are being concerned, right? So we are continuing to grow to the A/B testing. And then when we have results for that, then we can go and say that, okay, now we have done for CDs of a particular month expiring and a particular balances of a certain greater than, then we'll focus on particular branches that we are focused on. So you can continue to grow and understand how your customers are behaving so that you can do the best possible ways to retain the customers that you have and also position what you can potentially do. Okay, so with that, I am going to stop the demo because we're almost at 10 minutes to 12, and then we will take some Q&A. I think there are a couple of questions that has come about in the chat. Let me first take a look at this. This question says, what additional skills you think does a typical non-tech employee, such as HR manager, should have to become a citizen developer? That is a great question, actually. What I would say is that they need to have some basic logic. That is about it. So as long as they understand basic logic questions like if then else statements, how do we split up workflows, as long as you have that and somewhat little familiarity with the applications, that should be more than enough. To answer a question more specifically, HR managers are typically very familiar with HCM platforms, whether that be Kronos, whether that be Workday, or any other HCM applications that they typically use. So as long as you're familiar with that, and you know what to do next and so on and so forth, you'll be able to very easily build applications. So for most of the time, we are talking, when I mean low code developers, I'm actually talking about sales managers, right? Or sales enablement people or marketing managers. I'm talking about HR managers from employee onboarding perspective. Last week, we were talking to a television on television shopping channel, right? They are big on customer service. They have to do training because when a customer service agent comes in, they have to go through the necessary onboarding process, recruiting process, training processes. Now I'm talking to the training manager, I'm talking to the HR manager, I'm talking to the recruiter. Nobody has programming skills, but all of them are able to build those processes very, very seamlessly. The only key thing is you need to know the logic of how you want the business process to execute. The second question that I have is, can we implement low-code tools within the existing systems that we're using already? The short answer is it depends on what that system is. If you're talking about legacy systems like PeopleSoft or EBS or Siebel or some of those ancient systems that I'm talking about, very likely you won't have low-code technology there, very likely. Creatio can definitely supplement as a low-code technology where we are sending data back and forth. Now, that is a very common way of interacting with those legacy systems. For example, when we are talking to many of our prospects, they have ERP systems from 2003. They last upgraded that in 2015, but they're able to push data out into Creatio. So Creatio will pull that data in, and then using low-code business processes, you can synthesize that data, you can visualize data, and then you can push that data back into the ERP system, right? So you can still do your order management in the ERP system, but at least from the contract management, at least from the discount approval process, all of those business processes that needs to happen, you can use Creatio to do that. The other example could be where you are using a homegrown, let's say, a client talent management system, right, from a recruiting processes. So you can still continue to use that, and the channel that I was talking about actually has a similar use case like that, where they have a homegrown talent management system. As soon as that record is then pushed out into Creatio, it can come in as a simple email. Everything else you can do in Creatio, then you push that data back, and then you synthesize that data in the talent management system and then push data back into Creatio. So what I would say, rather than using the existing system as a low code, Creatio can be that wraparound software that you can apply on top of it, almost like a blanket, if you imagine. And using REST or SOAP APIs, send data back and forth. So you have the best of the both worlds. You can continue to work with your existing legacy system, but then use Creatio to automate as much as possible. The last question that I'm noticing in the chat is, how quick can low code deliver? How fast a non-developer can build a working prototype and then a minimum viable product? That's actually a great question. The short answer is it depends on the scope of what that low code applications look like. Typically, we say that anything that can be done in weeks or months can be done in days and maybe at best weeks, right? And the reason is, as long as the business process is available, you'll be able to use drag and drop functionality. But then, from a timeline perspective, usually it is days and weeks. So that's the answer to the very first question. The second question is, how fast can a prototype can be built and a minimum viable product be built. That depends upon, again, upon your company, on how, what kind of protocols that you have, right? And again, in Creatio, platforms like Creatio, because we are also a CRM, there is also a testing environment that you get hands-on to. There is a development environment that you get hands-on to. So typically, you will build those applications in the development environment, and then once it is done, you then push that data into testing environment, invite people to make sure that all of the data is doing exactly the way it is, the user acceptance testing, the functional testing, the system level testing. And only then, once everybody has agreed that this application works the way it is, then you push it into production, right? So those processes will not change, but what will change is how quickly can you make that application? How quickly can you make the changes once the user acceptance testing makes certain recommendations? That is where the savings will happen. Typically, again, from a minimum viable product, we are talking about days or weeks at best, when in reality, other applications would take weeks or even months. So that is typically the turnaround time that we're talking about. I think with that, I'm going to conclude the webinar right now. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope this was very helpful from understanding how COVID has both positively and negatively impacted financial institutions, and how they're using the technology of AI and low code to continue to compete with the newcomers like fintech companies. Thank you very much for your time today, and good luck, and thanks again. Bye, everyone.